Little Ricky disappeared along with his mother. For 2 long years, a rural house in Franklin County in southern Illinois kept a secret. What was hidden within its walls? Viewer discretion is advised. You're listening to Pale Walks. Richard, or Ricky Chekevda, was born in 2002 in Franklin County. His parents, Shannon Wilfong and Michael Chekevda, had been in a relationship for a while. The couple decided to separate even before Ricky was born. Their relationship had been difficult. They broke up, then got back together over and over again. The only constant was conflict. After the breakup, Shannon and Michael agreed to share custody of their child, even though their relationship had ended due to many serious disagreements. But for the sake of their son, they agreed to joint parenting and even managed to spend time together without major conflict. Back in 1982, Michael had joined the Illinois Army National Guard in West Frankfort, not far from his hometown of Royalton, Illinois. Unexpectedly, Michael was deployed to Iraq when Ricky was still very young. While stationed there, all he had were cherished memories of holding his son in his arms and a photo in his wallet showing the two of them together. Michael did everything he could to stay connected with Ricky by phone. He would ask Shannon to hold the phone to the boy's ear and whispered words of love. For 43-year-old Michael, Ricky was a long-awaited child, and although things hadn't worked out perfectly, he loved the boy, as he himself said, more than anything in the world. He counted the days in Iraq, waiting for his service to end so he could see his son again. In 2004, Michael returned home. He couldn't believe how much his son Ricky had grown. At first, the boy didn't recognize him, but over time, Ricky became increasingly attached to his father. Ricky was proud of his dad, a former police officer and a lieutenant colonel in the Illinois National Guard. Like many boys his age, he would proudly tell his friends that his dad was the strongest. Shannon started to notice that her son was becoming more and more drawn to his father. It began to seem to her that Ricky loved Michael more. Although the former couple had a mutual agreement on equal custody, Ricky's mother began behaving strangely. Shannon would often take her son away just hours after he arrived at his father's. She stopped answering phone calls and didn't bring Ricky at the agreed times. Michael barely saw his child. Of course, this felt unfair to Michael, who was doing everything he could to be a good father. He eventually turned to the authorities for help. In the fall of 2007, following the custody agreement, Michael filed a court case. He awaited anxiously, hoping that Ricky would come to court with his mother. But unfortunately, Shannon did not show up that day or on any of the following days. The judge took this into account and granted Michael temporary custody of Ricky, but the father's legal victory meant very little. Michael still couldn't be with Ricky because he had no way of contacting Shannon. She wasn't home and she didn't answer the phone. Things only got worse. Michael began searching for Shannon. She hadn't shown up to work for several days. She hadn't told anyone anything. Neighbors hadn't seen her. Shannon's mother didn't know where her daughter and grandson were. In November 2007, Michael was horrified to realize that his ex-girlfriend and his son had vanished. He immediately contacted the police. Shannon and Ricky were officially listed as missing persons. The police began their investigation by questioning local residents. Some neighbors confirmed that they hadn't seen Shannon or Ricky for over a week. Others claimed they had seen Shannon enter her home the day before she disappeared. She was alone and appeared visibly distressed. She stayed for only a few minutes and then left in a hurry. Next, officers turned to Shannon's close circle. Relatives and friends. Most friends hadn't seen her in a long time. She wasn't in touch with anyone. She also hadn't called her mother for quite a while, although Michael claimed they had a good relationship and spoke often. It was strange that Shannon's mother didn't seem worried about her disappearance. One conversation with one of Shannon's friends surprised the police. The woman said Shannon and Ricky had visited her just a few days earlier. She had no idea that they had been reported missing a week ago. The police were shocked by this new information. Both women had children of the same age and they got along very well. Shannon had been visiting only this particular friend and no one else from her social circle. When asked how to contact Shannon or where she might be now, the friend said she didn't know. Officers asked her to call them immediately if Shannon came by again. It became clear that Shannon was hiding, and she was hiding her son, most likely to avoid the court and enforcement of its custody decision. The police suspected Shannon had taken Ricky and gone into hiding in order to prevent Michael from gaining legal custody. But why didn't she want Ricky's father to play any role in his life? To find answers, investigators turned to Shannon's mother, 51-year-old Diane Dobbs, to question her more thoroughly. Authorities were convinced she knew much more about her daughter's disappearance, or at least more than she was letting on. Under the intense gaze of one of the investigators, Diane suddenly broke down. She said Michael had never been a good father. At first, she claimed he verbally mistreated Ricky, and later, she and her daughter began to suspect that he had been inappropriate with the child. Shannon refused to let Michael see his son and stopped answering his calls. Diane was convinced that Shannon had taken Ricky far away from Michael, to a place where the boy would be safe. She insisted that Shannon was terrified of Michael and believed no one would help her. She had run away for the sake of her child. When asked whether police could search the house, Diane agreed without hesitation. Officers searched every room, but nothing suspicious was found. There was no signs of Shannon or Ricky. Had Shannon really run away to protect herself from possible harm? Diane certainly seemed to believe so. But now the police began to look at Michael differently. Suddenly, he became the center of the entire case. The last time police saw Michael, he looked extremely pale, with a blank stare. But perhaps there was just an attempt to mislead investigators. Michael Chikevdar firmly denied the accusations of mistreatment. There was no credible evidence of abuse. He rejected every statement Diane had made against him. During countless interrogations, he repeated that he would never be capable of doing such a thing to his child. Dozens of witnesses confirmed that Ricky adored his father and was clearly attached to him. "I couldn't sleep, I lost weight, I wouldn't wish this on anyone," Michael said over and over again. Eventually, he managed to convince the police that he posed no threat. But Diane stood her ground. She created several posters and placed them in front of her home, trying to expose what she called the true face of Michael. She claimed that other children had also suffered from Michael's behavior, but she was unable to provide specific details. Michael and Diane lived just 3 miles apart. Every day, she distributed flyers with accusation at local churches, shops, and anywhere Michael might go. Soon, he began to feel the weight of the public's judgment. People gave him harsh, condemning looks. He overheard whispers behind his back. Many began to blame him for the disappearance of Shannon and Ricky. For Michael, it was devastating to be experiencing the most painful moment of his life and, at the same time, be seen as the one responsible for it. He began to suspect that Diane was hiding something. He tried to speak with her, but she would immediately start screaming hysterically. Michael later said that every time he passed by her house, he made an effort to talk to her about his wife and son, but not once did he hear a single word in response. Eventually, Diane allowed the police to search her property again, but once more, no sign of the missing boy was found. For 2 long years, Ricky's whereabouts remained a mystery. In 2009, 2 years after Richard's disappearance, police received an anonymous tip that once again brought them to his grandmother's home, Diane Dobbs. It was September in rural Illinois. Officers gathered around the house. The windows were covered with closed curtains. Some were blocked by furniture and random objects. Stacy Kipner, a special agent with the Illinois State Police, later testified that officers entered the home with a search warrant, catching Diane completely off guard. They searched every room. At first glance, the house appeared empty, aside from Diane. but the officers noticed that she seemed extremely anxious and was trying to shield a chest of drawers against one of the walls. They asked her to move aside, and when they pushed the furniture away, they discovered a dark hole in the wall. It was a passage, apparently leading to a hidden room. And indeed, a narrow corridor led them into a small, cramped space with a plywood floor, no more than 1.5 meters high and wide, and about 3.5 meters long. Inside the room were Shannon and Ricky, dressed only in their underwear. Ricky looked very pale. Stacy Kittner was convinced that for 2 years, neither the boy nor his mother had stepped outside. But while Shannon had made that decision for herself, Ricky, in what should have been the most curious and active years of his life, was severely restricted. According to Kittner, just moments after being found, Ricky ran out into the yard, overjoyed, playing in the grass with pure excitement. There was no evidence that the boy had been attending school or receiving medical care during that time. Angela Anderson, an investigator with the State Agency for Child Protection, stated that the specialist who examined Ricky found he had a speech delay, underdeveloped reading and writing skills, and clear signs of social withdrawal. He constantly referred to his father as a monster, a word he had no doubt picked up from people around him over the past 2 years. In addition to the hidden room behind his dresser, police also discovered a hole in the floor and another one in the wall. Ricky and Shannon had multiple hiding spots prepared. These findings made it obvious that Diane and Shannon had planned the concealment carefully. Furthermore, Diane had lied when she claimed that the first hole had existed when she bought the house 14 years earlier. That statement was proven false. At a press conference, investigators did not disclose the exact details that led the sheriff's deputies and federal marshals to obtain a search warrant for Diane's house. But they did share one moment. "We let Ricky out of the patrol car, and he ran like he had never seen the outside world before. Honestly, it was heartbreaking," said the chief of Illinois State Police. Surprisingly, he added, he was in a very good mood. For someone who had been isolated for that long, he was incredibly social, kind, and polite, a remarkable little boy. Diane Dobbs told authorities that Ricky and his mother had spent no more than 5 minutes in the secret room over the entire period. She insisted, "My grandson ran around the house and the yard almost every day. We went fishing, made roast dinners, set off fireworks on the 4th of July. He helped me plant flowers in the backyard." She also claimed Shannon had homeschooled Ricky and described him as a bright and capable child. But later, Ricky would reveal that he had never gone outside. He had spent long stretches of time in the crawl space behind the dresser, not just when people visited, but regularly. The women were afraid that he might escape or be seen by someone. No one knows how long Diane and Shannon planned to keep the child hidden from the world. Police arrested Shannon and charged her with child abduction. Diane was charged with aiding and abetting. During the 75-minute court hearing, 30-year-old Shannon frequently cried and insisted she had done nothing wrong. Diane claimed her grandson had everything he needed. She maintained that he had been as free as possible for his age, and that she and Shannon had done everything they could to protect him from his father. But Ricky stated that his father had never hurt him, and as we know, he also said that he had always been kept inside the house. Reporters also interviewed neighbors. None of them had ever seen Ricky outside. It became obvious that the child had been completely isolated from the outside world. Due to the heavy curtains, he had spent 2 entire years without sunlight. On September 19th, 2011, Shannon pleaded guilty to the charges against her. She was sentenced to 1 month in jail, a $1,500 fine, and 2 years of probation. Diane also pleaded guilty and received 12 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. At first, Michael was only allowed to observe his son from a distance. Ricky was placed under state custody and began receiving therapy to cope with the psychological trauma he had endured. Michael waited patiently for the moment he would be allowed to reunite with his son. Richard, who had turned 7 years old on September 14, 2009. They want to make sure my son is psychologically ready to reintegrate with me after years of isolation. I just want our union to go as smoothly as possible, Michael said in an interview. Soon after, Michael was granted full custody of his son. In 2010, he left the military to focus entirely on being a good father to Ricky. Despite everything that had happened, Michael still wanted Ricky to have a relationship with his mother. I wanted her to visit him, he said. She came once every 3 weeks. I was only a strong believer that my son should stay in touch with his mom. Michael believed that Shannon loves her son, but at the time had found herself in a bad place, heavily influenced by her mother, who, as he put it, lived in her own world. Most likely, Shannon had experienced a long-term accumulation of stress and personal setbacks, which eventually led her to take the drastic step of abducting her child. After the abduction, her behavior became more rigid and controlled. Every passing day only reinforced her fear and isolation. At some point, Michael believes a psychological triad took over: hatred toward the child's father, dependence on her mother, paranoia. Everything Shannon did was fueled by that cycle. It's hard to pinpoint a single cause, but one thing is certain: this was the result of a long, gradual breakdown, the cumulative effect of ongoing stress, possibly over 5 to 7 years. Despite everything they went through, Michael succeeded in becoming the father Ricky needed most. Thanks for watching. If this case resonated with you, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and letting me know what do you think about this case in the comments. And what's more important, stay vigilant. Until next time.